Big and bold, the Panzer EVO RGB certainly makes a statement. Hot on the heels of Cougar's earlier tempered glass models, this full tower case adds remote control RGB fans for a distinctive desktop look. Throw in that PSU shroud and flexible storage options, and the result is a clean looking build with low stress. But is it worthy of the title RGB Crystalline Titan, as Cougar has named it? We'll be taking a closer look in this, our full review. When looking at PC cases, there's been an emerging trend in the last year for huge quantities of tempered glass and a liberal coating of RGB lighting. Although it's not a preference shared by all gamers, manufacturers have been falling over themselves to meet this demand with innovative and fresh designs. As the first RGB case from Cougar, the Panzer EVO RGB certainly meets this criteria. Tinted tempered glass gives real pop to those lights, while helping to minimise any cable mess. Even so, as part of our assessment, the box still needs to meet the needs of the MMO gamer. Large glass panels look great, but good airflow and air filtration need to be possible without cranking those RGB fans up to a deafening roar. Likewise, the rig needs to provide ample storage for all those games without breaking the bank by loading up on SSDs. And ultimately, the design needs to be flexible and durable enough to last, even though we might replace the internals several times over. The great news is that the Panzer EVO RGB fulfills all of these needs. Glass panels on the front and roof are mounted on standoffs and have slight cutouts to promote good airflow through the included magnetic air filters. A pair of removable carry handles are securely bolted to the roof, supporting builds up to 35 kilograms without smearing the glass. And the two removable 3.5-inch drive bays located on the back provide additional space for traditional hard drives, even though the 4 SSD slots feel a little excessive. There's even an adjustable hook for hanging your headset between sessions. That said, there are some compromises. Optical media has been dying for a while now, and the Panzer EVO RGB doesn't support any of those larger drives. Also, by shifting all storage onto the rear of the motherboard tray, cable management can get a little tight. Those magnetic air filters might also become problematic should you want to mount a radiator and fans on the same metal plate. It sounds obvious, but the first thing you notice about the Panzer EVO RGB is the size. Clocking in at roughly 22 inches square, because those removable handles add an extra 2 inches of height, and nearly 11 inches wide, this case is designed to handle almost any rig you could choose to build, including 4-way SLI and double radiator water cooling. A significant chunk of those bulky dimensions is taken up by plastic and mock carbon fibre moulding that extends out an additional 2 inches. On the front and roof, this additional space is used to house fans and provide cooling clearance, while underneath it provides ample space from carpet if it's floor-based. These plastic parts can be unbolted and removed, as can the handles, to support spray painting and modding for that complete custom look. The 4 tempered glass panels come coated in a peel-off film and are held in place by thick and easy to grip thumb screws. But the most striking feature is the subtle tint to the sheets, which gives significant pop to any internal lighting while also helping to hide any clutter behind the motherboard tray and minimise the appearance when the rig isn't powered on. It's an effect that I'd not seen in a PC case before, but it definitely makes a difference in this case. One feature I wasn't expecting to use, but which has instead been surprisingly useful, is the headset hook. The front of the case has 4 different mounting points for this hefty plastic triangle, but it can stay in the box if you don't want to disrupt those clean lines. But for me, it's been an invaluable desk tidy. Getting inside, and there are further pleasing points. Rubber grommets for cable holes are pretty standard these days. The black plastic PSU shroud is a welcome addition that helps to hide a nest of cables. Likewise, the black air intake helps to keep SSDs cool while masking the various mounting bolts and brackets. The Panzer EVO RGB is supposed to support a range of motherboards including ITX, MATX, ATX and even some EATX. That said, using MATX, as in our test build, will require using additional standoffs to support the lower edge. It's also clear that ATX is the sweet spot for this case, as stepping up to a 12 by 11 inch EATX board will cause some of the cable holes to be obscured and further complicating the build. For a standard ATX build, clearance and space isn't an issue on the motherboard side, with support for 8.6-inch PSUs, 15.3-inch GPUs and 6.6-inch CPU coolers. On the reverse, the recessed motherboard tray provides roughly 2 inches of space for running cables and mounting drives, though things can get a little cramped if all of the optional drive bays are filled. The open design means there's plenty of holes to thread cables through around the top of the motherboard and down from the roof, and the tinted glass means that most of these cable runs will not be visible. However, I'm not a fan of using dimples or domes to mount motherboards, generally preferring brass standoffs. Grumbles aside though, the holes lined up perfectly, indicating how precisely the case had been shaped. Installing a closed-loop cooler, however, was a bit of a challenge. Using the Corsair H100i version 2 as an example, the default configuration of mounting the radiator in the roof with the fans beneath it wasn't possible, as the motherboard VRM heatsinks would get in the way. It's a similar story on the front of the case, as the removable plastic air guide also limits space. In the end, for this build, I mounted the radiator fans between the roof and the glass sheet to pull air through, but it means that a push-pull setup will need compromises. Looking around to the rear, and it's clear that Cougar has crammed in plenty of storage options. That's not always a good thing, however, as I found that loading it up with a full set of drives would make cable management difficult. Thumb screws have been used to make all of these drives removable, but the confined space can mean that going tool-free isn't an option. I'd also have liked more tie points or loops on the rear for attaching cable ties. What makes this particular case the Panzer EVO RGB is the inclusion of 4 120mm Cougar Vortex RGB fans, coupled with a Cougar core box and remote. The fans themselves are standard, high-quality, hydrodynamic bearing WPM fans. Each fan has 2 cables running from it, the traditional 4-pin PWM connector, and a new 5-pin connector to attach each of those LED strands to the core box. The Cougar core box itself has a couple of magnets to clip it to the motherboard, and there's a convenient recess next to the PSU that's the perfect size. This breakout box can also support 4 additional fans, up to a total of 8, plus direct addressable LED strips that use a standard-ish 3-pin motherboard connector. Annoyingly, however, it draws on that bulky 4-pin Molex PSU connector for power. Instead of providing computer control via USB, the Cougar core comes with a credit card-sized remote that provides access to a variety of lighting modes, together with direct access to particular colours. For many, this will provide plenty of control, but the Cougar has also included adapter cables to bypass the box completely if your motherboard supports direct addressable RGB lighting. Unfortunately, the fans aren't directly compatible with lighting control kits from other suppliers, such as Corsair's Lighting Node Pro. When wrapping up the test build, it was clear to see that the Panzer EVO RGB isn't making efficient use of space to pack in lots of hardware. Instead, the focus is on a clean build with good airflow that can work as a showcase for what's inside. Meanwhile, the modular design and high number of removable parts make this a case that's right for custom work. Even the PSU shroud has a removable sticker, while the case itself comes with a microfiber chamois cloth to remove pesky fingerprints from those glass sheets. It's also clear that aspects have been reused from other models in the Panzer range, and that's not always in a good way. The motherboard tray is the same one that's used in the Panzer Max, and it still has the grooves and cutouts from where the optical drives would be located in that other model. The inclusion of a fan speed selector switch also seems a little odd, and while we're looking at that front panel, why preserve that solitary USB 2 socket? I was also a little disappointed with the bare bones instruction leaflet. For a case that presents so many options, the eventual build required a mix of planning and trial and error to achieve. Despite all of this, the case looks spectacular, especially when it's been loaded up with additional RGB lights and fans. It would have been even better if the Cougar core box would interface directly with the PC, possibly through the motherboard USB header, but the RGB setup is otherwise incredibly easy to set up and expand on. Summing up, the Panzer EVO RGB is a superb new case from Cougar, and a great first entry into the RGB full tower market. Build quality is solid, and the choice of tinted tempered glass adds a unique touch of cool to an otherwise aggressive design. The layout provides plenty of build options that would work for most gamers, including storage-hungry MMO players, while creating a clean look that you can't wait to show off. Just don't expect to carry it far, even with those handles, as this is one heavy beast. Yes, there are a few drawbacks that stem from the Panzer EVO RGB's heritage, including water cooler limitations, some redundant cutouts on the motherboard tray, and some strange choices on that front panel. But overall, these fail to pull away from the overall function or aesthetic of Cougar's latest creation. The heavy use of thumbscrews mean that this is also a rig that supports easy expansion when it's time to upgrade. Just make sure to keep that chamois cloth handy. There's also a bigger question, and that's about the sheer size of this titan. With the glass panels and pre-installed RGB lighting, the Panzer EVO RGB is begging for a place on your desk. And yet, those mammoth dimensions and sheer weight would suggest it belongs tucked away on the floor. It's worth making sure that your gaming space can handle this imposing full tower before committing to a build. At $219, the Panzer EVO RGB is priced at a $60 premium for the RGB kit and USB-C, but Cougar's implementation is worth the extra if you're after multicoloured versatility. Understandably, that Tron meets Saturday Night Fever aesthetic might not be everyone's taste, but the regular Panzer EVO or Panzer Max have you covered if you're after something a bit more subdued. Ultimately though, for the proud rainbow magpies among us, this is one spectacular case. That's it for this video review. Don't forget to check the link in the description below for our full written review, which includes even more detailed photos on this case. Thanks for watching, and keep it locked to MMORPG.com.